Take a moment and just breathe before you keep reading, because what you're about to hear is not something light. It didn't come to you easily, and it didn't come to you quickly either. It traveled through a lot of silence, a lot of distance, and a lot of pain that stayed hidden until now, right when timing suddenly matters more than it ever has before. Stay with me for a minute because this touches something real. There's someone in your life who has been carrying something inside them for a lot longer than they'd ever admit out loud, longer than you probably even guessed. They didn't just wake up one random morning and stop caring about you, and they didn't actually move on the way their behavior might have made it look like they did. What really happened underneath all of that is much quieter, much less dramatic than it seems from the outside. They pushed their feelings down because they genuinely didn't know what to do with them. They buried those feelings. They hid them away where no one, including themselves, could look at them too closely. They convinced themselves that staying silent was the easier road to take. But feelings that get buried don't just vanish into nothing. They sit there in the dark, quietly gathering weight, waiting for the right moment to surface again. And eventually all of that built-up pressure rises to the top at once. That's exactly where this moment is coming from, not from courage, not from some sudden burst of peace or clarity, not from confidence either. It's coming from fear, it's coming from panic, it's coming from the uncomfortable, painful realization that they may have waited far too long to say or do anything at all. Something shifted in them very recently. Maybe they saw something that reminded them of you out of nowhere. Maybe your name came up in a conversation they weren't expecting. Maybe life just got quiet enough for once that the truth could finally be louder than every distraction they'd been using to avoid it. Whatever the exact trigger was, it shook them wide awake. And now there's one thought hitting them over and over hard. They might lose you. For good this time. This realization didn't arrive gently. It didn't show up in the middle of a busy afternoon where they could shrug it off and get distracted by something else. It hit late at night, when their phone felt unusually empty, when spending time with other people started to feel forced and hollow, when the noise around them finally died down enough that the silence started asking questions they could no longer dodge. That's the moment it became painfully obvious to them. No one else feels the way you feel. No one else listens the way you used to listen. No one else understood them without needing a long explanation for every little thing. No one else gave them comfort without making them feel boxed in or trapped. And the second that truth hit them, the sense of urgency began. But pay close attention here, because this part matters a lot. This rush of urgency is not the same thing as pure love. There's fear tangled up in it too. It's the fear of losing something that, once it's gone, simply cannot be replaced by anyone or anything else. If they could speak to you right now without their pride getting in the way, without excuses lined up to protect themselves, without their ego standing in the middle of the conversation, they would probably tell you something painfully simple and honest. They should have done more, and much sooner than they did. They thought they had more time than they actually had. They assumed your patience and your care would just stay in place no matter how long they went quiet. They didn't understand until it was almost too late that silence itself can wound a person deeply. Esta persona empieza a sentir culpa por su silencio, su miedo y las oportunidades perdidas. Al ver que has cambiado y elegiste tu paz, comprende demasiado tarde el valor de la conexión que tenía contigo. Ahora teme haberte perdido definitivamente, pero el miedo y el arrepentimiento la mantienen paralizada, mientras acepta que algunas relaciones no pueden recuperarse con una simple disculpa. But here's the part that matters more, at least for you. Listen closely to this. This message isn't telling you to sit around and wait for them. It's not asking you to rush into forgiving them right away. It's not trying to drag you back into old pain you've already worked so hard to move past. All it's really doing is showing you a truth they've failed to show you through their actual actions. You mattered to them far more than they ever managed to express while they still had the chance. Your absence is louder to them now than your presence ever seemed to be while you were still right there in front of them. And whatever existed between the two of you was real, even if they handled it badly and let it slip through their fingers. Your power in all of this lies in what you choose to do next. Real power doesn't rush into anything just because someone else is suddenly feeling panicked. And here's something a lot of people completely miss in situations like this. Feeling a sense of urgency doesn't automatically mean someone is actually ready. A person can feel completely desperate and still not be prepared to love someone well, or love them properly, or love them consistently over time. Right now, this person is sitting face to face with the direct result of who they chose to be when it actually counted the most. And results have a way of stripping away every illusion a person has been clinging to. They strip away the convenient excuses. They show in plain view exactly what silence ends up costing in the long run. They're replaying old moments now, moments they once brushed off as small or insignificant, and seeing them completely differently through the lens of loss instead of the lens of pride they used to view things through. They remember the little things now, the ones that felt too ordinary to matter at the time. They remember how you used to check in on them without needing a specific reason to do it. They remember how you noticed shifts in their mood before they ever said a single word about it. They remember how you managed to stay calm even when they pulled away from you. They remember how you always tried to understand them instead of jumping straight to blame. And those memories weigh on them now, because they reveal something painful and uncomfortable. You met them at a depth they simply weren't ready to meet within themselves. They avoided real emotion. They avoided the kind of growth that actually requires effort. They avoided the responsibility that comes attached to any genuine bond between two people. For a long stretch of time, they lived like distance was some kind of protection. But now, that same distance feels more like exposure. They feel seen by you even inside your own silence now, and your silence itself has changed. It used to feel like a short pause. Now it feels like actual distance, the kind that might not close back up. That difference is hitting them hard. They can sense that you're no longer building your emotional world around their confusion or their mixed signals. You're no longer waiting patiently for them to catch up. And that awakens something even deeper in them, a fear that goes beyond just worrying that you might say no. It's the fear that they might not matter to you the way they used to. They're scared that you may have quietly closed this chapter already, without a fight, without a dramatic speech, without needing final answers spelled out for them. That kind of calm terrifies someone who used to depend so heavily on your constant availability. They're also starting to realize something else along the way. You never once asked them to be perfect. You only ever asked them to actually show up. You never demanded intensity or grand gestures from them. What you wanted all along was simple consistency. You weren't asking them to transform into a completely different person. You were only asking them to actually live as the person they always claimed to be, and now they can see, clear as day, how many times they chose comfort over courage instead. They kept telling themselves they just weren't ready yet. They made excuse after excuse for the silence, excuse after excuse for the distance, excuse after excuse for why right now simply wasn't the right time to step up. But readiness was never something that was just going to magically appear on its own one day. It has always been a choice someone has to actively make. And back when you were openly offering love, honesty, and your full presence, they didn't choose it. That realization is a painful one for them now, because the chance in front of them doesn't feel quite the same anymore. They can feel the difference in you clearly. It shows up in your tone. It shows up in your slower replies. It shows up in the fact that you no longer feel the need to explain yourself over and over. It shows up in the way you've stopped trying to prove your own worth to them. That quiet confidence you carry now changes the entire dynamic between you two. They used to think they had all the time in the world simply because you were gentle with them. They confused your patience with something permanent, something that would never run out. They assumed your care meant you'd wait around endlessly. They forgot somewhere along the way that patience always has its limits, and that self-respect tends to show up eventually, sooner or later, whether they were ready for it or not. Now they find themselves trapped in a genuinely difficult inner battle. They want to reach out, but they're scared of starting something they might not actually be able to sustain. They want to apologize, but they're afraid of making promises they can't keep this time. They want closeness again, but they're afraid of the ongoing work it takes to hold onto it properly. So instead, they stay stuck somewhere between wanting you and avoiding you, caught between real desire and real fear at the exact same time. That's exactly why their energy feels so mixed up, so uneven, so restless whenever your name comes up. Their heart is pulling in one direction, but their actions keep showing something entirely different. They imagine themselves being brave. They imagine finally saying all the right words to you. They imagine showing up in a completely different, better way this time. But imagining something is always the easy part. Real life demands actual effort. Real life demands actual change, sustained over time. Real life demands that the truth gets repeated through consistent action, not just spoken once and then forgotten. And that's precisely where fear tightens its grip on them the most. Because deep down, they already know that words alone aren't going to be enough for you anymore. You're no longer waiting around to be moved by a nice speech or a well-timed apology. You're watching now for what's actually real and consistent over time. This doesn't mean you've stopped caring altogether. It simply means you've grown, quietly and steadily, in your own time. You sat with your own sadness. You faced your own disappointment head-on instead of running from it. You let the truth become clear to you instead of avoiding it the way they did. They're only just beginning that same process now, and timing genuinely matters here. Growing after you've already lost something feels completely different from growing while that love is still safely in your hands to protect and nurture. They know deep down that even if they reach out and speak to you now, things can't simply snap back to the way they used to be. And that terrifies them because what they miss the most isn't just you, it's the version of you that trusted them fully without holding anything back. Trust doesn't just reset itself the moment someone finally finds the right words to say. Once trust changes shape, it changes the entire shape of the connection along with it. Permanently. So now, in a way, they're standing at a kind of doorway. Behind them sits the comfort of continuing to hide, of staying in the familiar patterns they already know. In front of them sits the risk of actual honesty, the risk of being fully seen. If they stay silent, they risk losing you completely, maybe for good this time. If they speak up, they have to face themselves honestly, without any more excuses to hide behind. And that's something they've been avoiding for a very, very long time now. What you've been feeling through all of this isn't just simple confusion on your end. It's a real shift, and it runs deep. Underneath everything that's happened, a quiet truth has been steadily growing this whole time. Loss doesn't always announce itself loudly the moment it actually happens. Sometimes it arrives as barely more than a whisper. Sometimes it looks like nothing more than emotional distance settling in slowly. Sometimes it's just a small, subtle shift in energy that no one could really argue with or point to directly. They feel that whisper now, clearly. They feel it every time they picture calling you and suddenly realize they honestly have no idea what you'd even say back to them. They feel it when they imagine you moving forward with your life, not out of anger toward them, but with genuine peace and clarity instead. And that particular thought shakes them because it's completely outside of their control. They can't charm their way around it. They can't stay busy enough to drown it out or silence it. For maybe the first time in a long while, they're truly facing the full cost of their own fear. For so long, they fought against what they actually felt for you. They fought against the responsibility that comes with really being there for someone. They fought against openness, against softness, against plain honesty. And now, all of that resistance has folded itself into real pressure building up inside them. They're not only afraid of losing you as a person, they're afraid of what losing you might say about who they really are underneath everything. Deep down, they already know this was never just about bad timing or simple confusion. It was fear the whole time. Fear of being fully seen by someone. Fear of failing at love when it actually mattered. Fear of not knowing how to properly care for something rare without accidentally damaging it along the way. Now they keep replaying the exact moments when they could have said something honest and chose not to. The moments when they clearly saw your confusion building and still chose silence over clarity anyway. Back then, those moments felt small and forgettable in the moment. Now they feel unbearably heavy. Heavy, because they're finally seeing the full truth of it all. You didn't just suddenly vanish from their life out of nowhere. You slowly adjusted, bit by bit, to exactly what they kept showing you through their actions. You stopped doing all the emotional heavy lifting for both people involved. You stopped filling in the blanks with hope that things would somehow change on their own. You stopped hurting yourself just to keep a fragile connection alive by sheer force of will. That change in you happened slowly, gradually, over time. And maybe they missed it entirely at first, because you never made a big dramatic scene out of it. But they see it clearly now. They've noticed that you no longer lean on them the way you used to. They've noticed that their opinion doesn't carry the same weight or power over you anymore. And what unsettles them the most, honestly, is just how calm you seem through all of it now. Calm can actually be far more final than anger ever could be. Calm often means someone has already fully accepted what's real and true. Calm can mean you're no longer holding out hope or fighting for some different ending to this story. They're used to confusion. They're used to intensity. They're used to mixed signals going back and forth. They genuinely don't know what to do with someone who has finally become clear about what they want and don't want. Stay with this for a second longer, because this is really the heart of everything. You're not sitting around waiting to be chosen by them anymore. You're standing firmly in your own worth instead. And that single shift changes the entire stakes of the whole situation completely. Now their fear only becomes more complicated as a result. They worry that if they finally come forward and speak up, they'll end up exposing exactly how unready they truly still are underneath it all. They worry that even if you're willing to listen to them, they might not actually be able to become the person you genuinely need them to be this time around. They worry that you see them more clearly than they've ever really seen themselves. And truth is, a genuinely hard thing to stand in when you've spent so long hiding comfortably behind excuses instead. They want to tell you they cared the whole time. They want to explain away the long silence somehow. They want to say they simply felt overwhelmed and had no real idea how to handle something that felt this real and this significant. But they're learning a painful, unavoidable lesson right now. Understanding something too late doesn't undo whatever already happened as a result. Good intentions alone don't erase another person's actual lived experience of being hurt. Saying sorry doesn't magically rebuild trust if the underlying behavior stays exactly the same as before. They already know this, deep down, whether they say it out loud or not. That's exactly why they keep pausing instead of acting. That's why they sit frozen in the tension between the person they used to be and the person they might still have a chance to become if they actually try. Growth genuinely hurts sometimes. There's no clean, painless way around that fact. They're feeling all of that pain right now, in real time. The pain of missed chances they can't get back. The pain of sudden self-awareness they can't unsee. The pain of realizing that real change might be arriving only after the chance to use it has already quietly slipped away. That's the real hurry sitting inside them right now, underneath everything else. It isn't only a hurry to reach out and get back to you. It's a deeper hurry to finally face themselves honestly before life closes this particular lesson for good, without giving them another shot at it. You were something like a mirror for them this whole time. You reflected depth back at them, and truth, and real emotional courage. Instead of actually looking into that mirror when they had the chance, they turned away from it instead. Now that you're no longer standing there in quite the same way you used to, they feel the sudden loss of that reflection sharply. They feel disconnected from a part of themselves that used to only really show up clearly when they were around you. And that disconnection is forcing them to finally ask themselves the hard, uncomfortable questions they've spent so long avoiding altogether. What you've been sensing through all of this isn't just that they want you back in their life. It's that they're genuinely waking up to something real, maybe for the first time in a long while. Waking up like that hurts. Regret hurts. And seeing your quiet strength now only makes all of it feel more real and more permanent to them. They know they can't come back into your life casually this time, treating it like nothing happened. Not after everything. They can see clearly now that you didn't fall apart when they first stepped back from you. You didn't beg for their attention. You didn't collapse under the weight of it all. Instead, you grew stronger through it. You chose to protect your own dignity. You chose your own peace, even when it was difficult. And because of that choice, their respect for you has actually grown, even as their fear has grown right alongside it in equal measure. They understand now, whether they like it or not, that they can't come back to you with half-hearted effort, vague words, or the same old patterns they used before. You're simply not someone they can afford to treat carelessly anymore. The cost of that kind of carelessness is far too high now. The truth of the situation is far too clear now for them to keep pretending otherwise. That's exactly why they feel so unsure of themselves and what to do next. They don't want to approach you as the exact same person they were before all of this happened. But at the same time, they don't fully know who they even are without all the walls they've spent years hiding behind for protection. And that's really the final truth sitting quietly underneath all of this. They're standing right now in a genuine moment of exposure, with nowhere left to hide from it. Behind them sits their old life, their old habits, their long list of familiar excuses. In front of them sits honesty, real growth, and genuine risk. They can feel that if they choose to do nothing at all, they might lose you in a way that can never fully be undone afterward. But they also know, somewhere deep down, that actually saying something to you means stepping fully into real, sustained change. Not just a wave of emotion, not just a moment of panic, not just simple longing for something they miss. So if you've been feeling this strange, quiet pressure lately, this subtle shift in the air, this heavy energy hanging around your connection with them, please know that you are not imagining any of it. Something really is changing on their end. They are finally facing what they spent so long trying to avoid facing. They are feeling, maybe for the first time, the true cost of all that delay. They are learning the hard way that love handled badly still leaves a lasting mark behind, even when no one meant for it to happen that way. And now, the choice in front of you is no longer only theirs to make anymore. The deeper power in this entire situation actually belongs to you. You don't have to rush into anything just because they're suddenly feeling afraid. You don't have to fling the door back open simply because they're finally able to hear the silence between you clearly for the first time. All you really have to do is stay honest with yourself, above everything else. And if this message happened to find you at exactly the right time in your own life, then you probably already know that the real question here was never whether they feel the loss of you. The real question is whether anything real is actually going to come from it, or whether this was simply one more moment that passes them by, unused, the way so many others already have.